Hello, everyone, and very good morning to all of you. Distinguished delegates and participants from SAARC member states and regions around the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very thankful to all of you for joining us in this SAARC webinar on waste to energy municipality level demonstration project in selected areas of member states. My name is Bhaskar Pradhan and I'm working as Program Leader Energy Trade at SAARC Energy Center, Islamabad. I shall be moderating today's webinar. First of all, allow me to briefly speak about the important role played by SAARC Energy Center in the South Asian region. The center, being a regional institute and a technical arm for the SAARC organization on energy matters, has contributed tremendously through capacity building and regional cooperation of the member states. This center started its operation in year 2008. During last 10 years, the center has emerged as a vibrant and effective SAARC institute, which has played its role in all regional level energy initiatives. The center has carried out 100 plus interventions. The report of these interventions are available on center's website free of cost to anyone interested. Ladies and gentlemen, this webinar consists of presentations from various experts having knowledge of the experience and initiative of waste to energy technologies, consideration of factor before selecting a technology such as type, quantity and calorific value of waste, lowest carbon footprint of waste to energy technology, available mechanism for community-based source segregation of waste, separate collections and resource recovery system, etc. The objective of which is to introduce different waste to energy based technologies to the participants. The webinar will share suitability, viability, and other aspects of the technology with reference to business, government officials, investors, project developer, academia, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, I am also extremely grateful to our elite panel of speakers. We have with us Mr. Rahul Tikku Baswani and Mr. Gangawani Rao from India, Mr. Amir Sajad Bhatt from Pakistan, and Mr. Sunil Prasad Lohani from Nepal. We are thankful to them for their enthusiasm and eager willingness to participate in our webinar. We will introduce them in detail before the start of their session. Dear participants, we will have the opportunity to ask questions to presenters by typing your questions or clicking to the raise hand options into the attendee pane of the main window of the GoToWebinar software. You may send your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of individual presentation. Well, moving ahead, the first speaker for the day is Mr. Rahul Tikku Baswani. He will be speaking on decentralized waste to energy recovery for municipal waste management. And to introduce him, Mr. Rahul Tikku Baswani is a sustainable development specialist with 15 years of experience in working or consulting with national and sub-national government, private sector, civil society organization, and the United Nations. Mr. Baswani's expertise is designing and implementing multi-stakeholder projects for decentralized urban waste resource recovery, circular economy, and sustainable natural resource management, and in facilitating international cooperation for green technology transfer in developing countries. Mr. Baswani has a Master's of Arts in International Affairs from American University in Washington, D.C., USA, and Masters of Natural Resources and Sustainable Development from University for Peace in Costa Rica. Mr. Baswani is based in Seoul, South Korea, where he works as a sustainability consultant. With this, I would like to welcome Mr. Baswani for his presentation.
Hello, good morning. Good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are now. This is Rahul Vaswani. I am connecting to you from Seoul, South Korea. I can see a few of my friends are also here. Dr. Rao is also here. Good morning, Mr. Rao. And thank you, Mr. Bhaskar, for introducing me, and thank you for inviting me to present. Today I am going to talk about, basically I'm going to give an overview of how we can look at decentralized waste to resource recovery. I would say it's a fairly simple solution, a very low cost, locally appropriate solution, and hopefully it can also generate employment for poor people in cities. I'm going to talk about first the conceptual notion of why we want to look at waste to resource recovery in South Asia. And second, I want to present an example of decentralized waste resource recovery, which was implemented by the UN system where I was working. And it was a fairly successful model. It has been implemented in 6 different countries. So I will talk a little bit about that. So I begin my presentation. I just want to confirm that, can everybody see my screen? Is it clear? Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, everything is perfect. The voice is clear and we can see your slides, sir.
Okay, wonderful. So I will now start to go ahead. If you can see the first page of my screen, I'm going to talk about decentralized municipal solid waste management, or MSW as it is normally called, as an acronym. The first thing is, how do we? Okay, so let's start looking at what really is the global picture of waste management and where do we stand. As in South Asia, I'm South Asian too, I'm from India, and where do we actually stand? The most recent, and I would say the most accurate report of solid waste generation in the world, and this specifically pertains to MSW, which is municipal solid waste. And within municipal solid waste, these numbers that you're going to see on the screen are they're only measuring waste from residences, that means households, from public institutions and commercial establishments. So these numbers on the screen do not account for C&D waste, which is construction and demolition waste. The hazardous waste, so hazardous waste could be from small-scale industries within the city or other different forms of waste which are toxic in some way. Industrial waste, either large scale or small scale, and medical waste. So these 4 different wastes are not considered. It is only household waste, and still the numbers are so large. So you can see totally in the world today we produce about 2 billion tons of MSW per year, and out of 2 billion, more than 33%, that means a third of it, not exactly, I mean, not right now it's 15%, comes from South Asia. So in 2016, about 15% of the total world's MSW comes from South Asia, but it's going to climb very, very quickly. In the next 34 years, it's going to climb to 660 million tons of waste. So it's a number that's going to double in 34 years. Already we are seeing that in some cities, some very large cities in South Asia, the waste that is produced is comparable to the total amount of waste produced by large cities in developed countries. So cities like Bombay, Delhi, Karachi, in developing countries are producing very, very large amounts of waste. There is of course a difference in the composition of waste, but we mustn't forget that although we are in developing countries, we are in a part of the world which is not fully industrialized, which is not very industrialized, we still produce very large volumes. The next number is, if you look, okay. Now, what is really happening in terms of waste generation? The primary cause, I would say, the primary reason for waste generation is urbanization. As we urbanize, and now more than half of the world is urbanized. That means more than 50%, almost 54% of the people on the planet now live in cities. And in South Asia, it is still less. In India, I would say about 35% of the people live in cities. In Pakistan, it's about similar. In other areas of South Asia, it's also similar or even lower. But although our urbanization is low, we are producing a lot of waste. And as urbanization increases, and we are very rapidly urbanizing, as we urbanize more, we're going to produce more and more waste. Uh, the other aspect of urbanization is, as we urbanize and as we produce more waste, the composition is changing. Right now, South Asia has about 57% organic waste. That means the MSW is organic. But very quickly, it is now changing to becoming non-organic or non-biodegradable. And that makes it very difficult, because if you have more non-biodegradable waste, it's more difficult to recycle. It's more difficult to treat it. It's a higher chance of pollution to the environment. Globally, we produce about 300 million tons of plastic. In South Asia, it's much less, of course. But I mean, the numbers for our South Asia are not very clear, but we're getting there. We're also very high consumers of plastic. A lot of the plastic is single-use plastic, which is very, very difficult to treat, very difficult to recycle. I don't think there's any country in the world right now that has a real clear solution for single-use plastics. Globally, MSW produces about 5% of the global emissions. Again, in South Asia, this is much less. I will show you in the next few graphs. But we have our own contributions to municipal solid waste producing emissions. Open dumping is the primary way of disposing waste in the whole world. I don't know the figures right now, but in South Asia, I think it's more than 50% of the waste, 60% of the waste is openly dumped. And because we are openly dumping the waste, a lot of it is untreated, it's unmanaged, a lot of it is ending up in oceans. Now you look at the graph for the world. Of course, South Asia, because it is less urbanized compared to other regions. It is even lesser. It is less. Some parts of South Asia are even less urbanized than African countries. So our waste generation is still low. But because our population is so high, because India has almost 1.25 billion people, and the other countries, Pakistan has I don't remember now, maybe 220 million people. Our population is so high that the total volume of waste production is very high. So although our urbanization is still quite low, we are still producing quite large volumes of waste. Here is the graph for South Asia. As you can see, 57% of the MSW, the municipal solid waste generated in South Asia, is organic. In some ways, that's a good sign. And we will talk about that later in this presentation, about why that is good. But you also look at the plastics. It's almost 8%. It's 8%. A lot of this is non-recyclable plastic, and this is causing a great amount of pollution. If you look at the figures for South Asia, Nepal is on the lower end. I have my doubts about this number, to be honest. I think it should be higher. It's not 0.17 kilogram per person per day. It'd probably be around 0.3. But in general, South Asia is towards the lower end of waste generation throughout the world. But like I said, this is per capita. When you multiply this with the total amount of people in these countries, then the total volume of waste generated is very high in South Asia. Now, here is the way we deal with our waste. There are two things to note here. Previously I said we deal about 60% of our waste is open dumped in South Asia. I was wrong. It's actually 75%. The graph shows that 75% of the waste in South Asia is openly dumped. Now, this could be dumped in some sort of managed dumps, or just collecting the waste and dumping it in unmanaged dump sites. So these are not engineered landfills at all. These are just open dump sites. This is a predominant practice, a prevalent practice in most of South Asia. And so the two things to remember from this is, we in South Asia are dumping the maximum amount or maximum fraction of our waste, and compared to us, all of the regions of the world are dumping less of their waste in open dumps. So it's not a very good practice for us. On the other spectrum, what is good for us is that we are composting 16% of our organic waste. which is a good sign. So it's a sign that we are trying to recover as much economic and as much ecological value from the organic fraction of our waste. And the organic fraction is 57%, we just saw on the previous slide. So we're trying to recover as much as we can, but we can do a much better job, much better job, I would say. Now, here is where we are lacking. Almost 2/3, or almost 60%, 56% to be accurate, of our waste that is generated in South Asia is not collected. Only 44% of the waste that we generate, we collect. Most of this collection is done by municipalities. Waste management, in most cases, is a public task, is a municipal task. Very few cities, very few local governments have subcontracted their work to private enterprises. So our municipalities are collecting less than half of our waste, and mostly, 75% of it is going to open dumps. What happens to the other 50%? It's either burnt, it's incinerated at the community level, at the neighborhood level. In poor communities, they burn their waste to deal with the volumes, and in other cases it's tossed. It's thrown into lakes, it's thrown into rivers, it's thrown into canals. Some of it is just centralized in open spaces which are not inhabited. So it's essentially, these are mini dumps or micro dumps of waste. Now, when you try to summarize the condition that we are in now, when you look at what's really happening at the urban level in waste management, I think this is a schema, a diagram that does a fairly good job of trying to summarize what are the problems. I would say that there are 4 or 5 core issues with waste that we produce. The primary, I think, the issue is that we don't segregate it. So although we are composting 16% of our organic waste, very few cities are segregating the waste at source. That means at either the household level or the commercial level, the commercial establishments level, we are segregating our waste. And this really this inhibits our ability to deal with it in a pragmatic, in an efficient, in an ecological and economic way. Coupled to the unsegregated waste problem is that, of course, we have very low collection rates, and the reason why we have very low collection rates is because we have, I would say, inadequate infrastructure. We don't have enough, I would say, trucks. We don't have enough capacity. We don't have enough manpower hired by the governments. They're often short of money. They're often short of funds. One of the estimates in one of the studies that we did at the UN, it showed that it showed us that almost in some cases in small cities, municipal governments are spending anywhere from 20 to 50% of their local budget, their local annual budget, on waste management, and it's basically collecting half the waste and taking it to open dump yards or to disposal sites. So these are 3 interrelated issues: non-segregated waste, inefficient collection, and low capacity. On the other spectrum, there are issues of lack of awareness or lack of participation by waste producers or waste generators. That means households or commercial establishments, in knowing what are the real large scale and long-term impacts of open dumping or of non-segregated waste or unmanaged waste. This is a core area, I think, where we can work on in cities in terms of developing awareness, starting from the school level or the city, the household levels or the commercial establishment levels, that waste is a public responsibility. It's a citizenship. It's a form of citizenship that we have to be engaged in. So related to this, of course, is that because there's low capacity, there's low amount of financing, there's low awareness, we have not indulged in good solutions. Most of the solutions that have been, I would say, are economically feasible or pragmatic are done at the industry level, or the small scale or large scale industry level, and at the municipal level, there are not they're not clearly demonstrated, decentralized, locally appropriate solutions for effective waste management. And related to these core problems, of course, are the peripheral problems of lack of revenue, because governments cannot recover economic value from waste management. They are perpetual in a vicious cycle. They have low revenue, high expenditure. There is a inefficient use of manpower, inefficient use of infrastructure, and that puts the government into a vicious cycle of high burdens and very low returns. So essentially, waste becomes a very low priority sector. It becomes a daily, I would say, like a troubleshooting exercise rather than a long-term planning, a long-term integrated sustainable planning with allocation of funds and resources. Associated with these problems, of course, if you try to isolate them into, or you try to categorize them into the political dimension, the ecological dimension, and the technological, the techno-economic dimension, you will find out that there is, I would say, a lack of clear leadership in some sense. Municipal mayors, municipal administrators, high-level administrators who are tasked with urban planning, with allocating funds and resources, they lack a clear sense in some ways of how to deal with waste and how is waste integrated with other sectors, with public health, with, let's say, employment, with environmental management, with environmental control, pollution control. So there's a lack of, I would say, in some sense, a clear sense of leadership and a grasp of these integrated issues. And of course, we discussed that there is, a lack of financial resources. There's a lack of policy environment, because the planners are not looking at waste in a long-term perspective. They don't create an enabling environment for private investors or companies which have solutions. And I'm sure some of the solutions will be discussed today. I know, for example, Dr. Rao has very, very good solutions to convert waste into energy. So there is a lack of I would say, an enabling environment to enable private stakeholders or even I would say entrepreneurs to invest in waste management. We obviously know that when you have open burning, it has a very high cost to society when waste is just dumped in open dump sites. I have seen municipal governments deliberately incinerating, that means openly burning the waste, not in closed environments, but putting fire to the waste to contain the volumes. That causes very serious amount of air pollution. Some of the highest rates of particulate matter pollution, PM 2.5 pollution from open burning of waste are in South Asia, and they are mostly at the periphery of large cities like Delhi, for example, or Kanpur city, for example, in India. Waste is burnt in open dump sites. That causes very, very high pollution. And when waste is of course not contained in a proper way, when it is not a sanitary landfill, there is a very high amount of leachate that goes into the underground water streams. During the rainfall season, there is a high amount of leachate that goes into surface water, into river bodies. And there are also issues of waste pickers. In India, or in most of South Asia, most of the recycling industry is informal. A lot of the waste that is recycled is done by the means of informal waste picking. So informal waste pickers, it is their livelihood to pick waste from open dump yards. Of course, they're also part of the in some ways an organized network of taking waste at source from households and commercial establishments. But a lot of the informal waste workers work at landfills, and for them it's a livelihood. But there are, of course, environmental and social issues associated with it. There was recently a study about the largest waste, the open dump of waste in Mumbai city in India. It's in a place called Devnar, and the average age of people the average longevity of people who live in Devnar is in their 40s, in the early 40s. So they are dying because of the exposure to open burning of waste, because dying to the exposure of they're dying young due to the exposure of high toxicity to the waste. So the longevity is much less than the normal longevity of the country. So this has a very high social and environmental cost, of course. When you look at the technological issues, I briefly mentioned it. There are very few, I would say, clearly demonstrated low cost, locally appropriate solutions for dealing at the different waste streams. That means organic waste, plastics, metals, woods, and everything. So although the informal waste recycling industry is looking at recovering economic value from waste products, they are looking at it from a very piecemeal economic perspective. So waste pickers and the informal waste economy will take recyclables which are of the highest value first. So maybe metals, maybe cardboards, maybe recyclable plastics. But what happens to the remaining waste? It's mostly just tossed into open landfills, or at best now there are companies that are contracting with cities to have incinerators. So it goes to an incinerator. That has a value in terms of reducing volumes of waste, the large volumes of waste generated in the city. But personally, I feel that is not a long-term sustainable solution. We have to look at waste right from the upstream, from where it is generated. So the solutions have to be not just end of pipe solutions. You collect the waste and you just dump it or you burn it. There has to be a clear focus on waste minimization at the source. And everything else, that means technology transfer or local capacity development, should be focused on this aspect of waste. That means minimizing waste volumes from where they're generated, either at the household level or even before that, where plastics are manufactured at the industrial level, for example. So there is a need to demonstrate waste management technologies which are locally appropriate. And the second half of my presentation is going to talk about one example which is useful in terms of integrated yet decentralized waste management. Now, as we move on to the 21st century, the reality of the waste management hierarchy is, of course, as you've noticed, in South Asia, 75% of our waste is either thrown into landfills or into sorry, not landfills. It's either openly dumped, or about 4% is landfills. So that's almost 80% of the waste at the bottom of the pyramid is unmanaged, is untreated. And then a slightly higher level than that, we have waste conversion technologies. Sometimes we do incineration, or we have some sort of breaking down of recyclables so that they can be recycled at not in a very efficient way. So this pyramid, in some ways, needs to be turned upside down. What needs to be happen is most of the waste should be tackled at the source. We need to reduce it, reuse it, and recycle it as close as possible to the source where it is generated. And thereafter, we must focus on more, I would say, economically intensive exercises of recycling and composting, or thermal or chemical based conversion technologies. And the least amount of waste which is not reused, which is not reduced, or which is not recycled or not treated should go to the landfill. Ideally, this should be the paradigm shift that we should be looking at. So if we have a paradigm shift, then the schema that I showed you in the previous 2-3 slides would then just flip. Everything else would I would say become from a negative to a positive. So this is basically what this schema is trying to say, is that if we start to tackle waste at source, if we improve its collection, and if we build awareness at the waste generation level, at the level of householders, at the level of commercial establishments, then if we work in partnership with governments and entrepreneurs and private enterprises, we can have a long-term sustainable solution for waste management. I'm going to come back to this slide a little later because this is in some ways a summary. What I want to get at with this slide is that when you have a paradigm shift in waste management, when you start looking at waste minimization, waste reduction at the source level, or how to tackle waste problems upstream, then we have a much higher chance of sustainable development benefits. And a lot of the sustainable development goals, now this is at a much higher international level, but of course countries also have their national commitments to sustainable development, that a lot of these sustainable development goals can be achieved. So waste can be decentralized waste management or upstream waste management can be a very good entry point for sustainable development. So I'll try to come back to the slide if we have time. But essentially what I wanted to say in this slide is that one entry point, that is waste, can impact a lot of different sustainable goals. Now, when we look at waste, it's important to look at who are the stakeholders. I have said it several times already, uh, uh, but I mean it's good to try to list them out. Now, when you start looking from the bottom level up, that means from the community level or the household level, the first stakeholder is the waste generator. It's the producer of the waste. That means the one that throws the waste outside of their household or the commercial establishment. Then you also have civil society organizations that are working with either waste workers, are working in the waste stream, or it could be, it could be any organization. It could be even a government-sponsored organization or a local level government organization, a municipal government, a ward government that is helping to tackle waste at the upstream, at the source level. Waste pickers are also a very big, I think, a very important stakeholder. Many times we overlook waste pickers because we see them as a problem. I think it's important to see them as a solution. They're doing. It's unfortunate if you look at the informal waste economy of India or South or Pakistan or Sri Lanka, for example, or even Nepal, Bhutan. Waste pickers are providing a free service to society. They're not getting paid salaries by the government, but they're picking waste. They're trying to pick out the recyclables as much as possible for free. Of course, they're earning something out of it, but their livelihoods are very barely at the margin of society. So waste pickers are an important stakeholder. They have access to the different waste streams where they can be recycled. Of course, at the government level, there are three levels of government. There's the municipal level government, the local level government, that is. There are subnational level governments in large South Asian countries. There are states and provinces, which have a very important stake in waste management. And then there are obviously the national governments that make the policies and the regulations, that have the financing. Most of the financing for, I would say, waste management comes from either the national level or from the state level, and then it is decentralized. It is sent in a decentralized fashion to the local governments, and the task of waste management obviously is local. There are also other stakeholders that we often forget. It's private companies, which often know how to deploy technological solutions at scale. That means at economic efficiencies, where they can maximize their profits and their revenues. So private companies, social enterprises, for example, have a very keen focus on trying to maximize the economic value realization from waste management. So they're a key stakeholder. The others are, of course, capacity development organizations. They could be either local or national. And also some of the useful ones are international. I have worked in an international capacity development organization, the UN. It was, I did trainings. I worked with governments. I helped develop policies, regulatory instruments, economic instruments. So even international capacity development organizations that are neutral, that don't have any political agenda, are also a core stakeholder. And often they can have funding. They can have funding to help local capacities, local governments develop their capacities, to do trainings, to do study tours, for example, and to also investigate which are sustainable technologies. So these are the core stakeholders in the waste management arena. Now, that was the first half of my presentation. I don't know how we are doing on time. Okay, I think I've overshot of time, but very quickly, I'm going to now talk about uh, what I consider is a feasible, low cost, locally appropriate solution. It's low tech. It doesn't involve high scale technologies. It's a solution to basically recover waste as much as possible close to the source. That means at the household level or the commercial level. Uh, it was a solution that we piloted in 6 countries. We piloted 10 different plants. The plant is basically called an integrated resource recovery center, and it was piloted by the UN organization, the core UN office based in Bangkok, where I was working, uh, in 6 different countries, in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. So there were 3 South Asian countries. This model was originally developed by an NGO, a social business enterprise called Waste Concern in Bangladesh. So it's a solution that has come from a developing country. It was a solution that has come from the global south. The solution is very simple. What they basically do is, um, now here is the, I think I need to say this really upfront, is the primary way that you can recover as much economic and ecological value from waste as close to its source is by segregating it. So the IRRC model, which I'm going to talk about, it will not work efficiently if the waste is not segregated at source. So it's a precondition, it's a prerequisite. So local governments have to work with waste generators to segregate the waste at source, at least in 2 different streams, organic and non-organic. Once you have segregated your organic waste, then you can do a lot with it. You can either compost it, you can put it into a biodigester. You can also co-compost your fecal sludge. That means your toilet sludge from septic tanks. You can evacuate it and you can co-compost it, or you can put it into a biodigester. And that's what you do with your organic component, and that's 57%. The average organic component of waste in South Asia we saw is 57%. So if you segregate your 57% of your waste, you can recover 100% of it. Almost 100% of 50%, 57% can be recovered by just 3 simple exercises: composting or biodigestion or co-composting. The rest 43%, which is either recyclable or non-recyclable, can be then segregated in finer components. And plastics can go for recycling, metals can go to the metals recycling, the cardboard can be recycled by the cardboard recyclers. So this IRRC model basically works on segregated waste, at least in 2 different ways: organic and inorganic, non-organic. And then it tries to recover as much economic and ecological value from simple processes. Now, what you just saw in this slide is more detailed. Here is when you have organic waste, you can have different processes. If you have recycles, you can sort them, you can shred them, you can compact them, and then you can sell them. If you have segregated oil, for example, from restaurants, from cafeterias, you can ultimately make biodiesel from it. If you have high calorific value of putrescible waste, that means which has high calorific value, non-organic waste, you can either make RDF, refuse derived fuel, or you can send it to incineration plants. And this also increases the efficiency of an incineration plant and also increases their economic returns, their profitability. If you have septic waste, that is fecal waste from household and commercial establishments, of course you can take it to drying pits and you can co-compost it with the organic waste from households or commercial establishments. So this is the basic, very simple, I would say, low cost processes. Of course, incineration is not low cost. Making biodiesel is also not low cost. It's, I would say, medium cost. And making RDF is also not low cost. But composting, biodigestion, and fecal waste co-composting are fairly or very low cost, or maybe the lowest cost in the spectrum of waste to resource recovery. This is the model of a very small 2.5 ton.
Hello,
Yes.
sir. Interview.
Yeah.
Can you complete it a bit earlier, sir? We are
In 2
unable to.
minutes. In 2 minutes, I will complete it. Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the delay. So I have been given a warning now. I'm very, very sorry. I will very quickly try to complete this. This is basically what an IRRC looks like. So it has a composting shed. It has a fecal sludge drying bed, where after the fecal sludge is dried, it can be co-composted, and it has, let's say, 4 or 5 biodigesters for making biogas, which can be used for either cooking purposes or to generate electricity in a generator. Now, this is just a 2.5-ton plant. The total area is about 800 square meters. These are different aerial views of it. Now, very quickly, I will just take you to 2 different slides on what is the cost associated with an IRRC. If you have an IRRC with only organic composting, you need land of approximately 150 to 200 square meters per ton of waste. And I would say that the cost of setting up a plant, an IRRC plant for 1 ton of waste is around 20,000 US dollars. We have made plants for less than 20,000 US dollars, but I would say 20,000 US dollars is the highest amount you could spend for about 1 ton to compost 1 ton of organic waste. If you have biodigesters, if you have anaerobic biodigestion, the cost increases 1.5 times. So you can use the same organic waste diluted with with water or other liquids, or let's say fecal liquids, and you can put it into a biodigester, and the cost will be about $30,000 per ton. I don't have time to talk about this in detail, but you can ask me more questions, and you will obviously get a copy of the slide. But essentially, ballpark figures are 20,000 for organic composting per ton and 30,000 for anaerobic digestion per ton. Now, just my last slide, I want to just briefly talk about it. Is very often governments forget that there is economic value to be recovered from even a simple exercise as composting. We did a study, a long-term study over 3 or 4 years of IRRCs in 3 different countries, in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. What we found is that the economic benefit from composting just even 1 ton of organic waste is you can get almost about $50. For example, in Bangladesh, where labor cost is very cheap, so the revenue is also less. It's about $50 you can get from 1 ton, whereas in Vietnam, it's closer to between $90 to $100 you can recover from 1 ton of organic compost. So instead of taking that 1 ton to the landfill and spending money on transporting the waste and dumping it, you can actually recover money, which is a net source of revenue for the city. Now that's essentially my last slide. These are just the links if you want to go and see where this information comes from and what are the background information. These are the links. Again, thank you very, very much for the opportunity to come to allow me to present this, and my apologies that I could not cover fully. I've missed only 2-3 slides, but you can always refer to them again and ask me questions. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, sir. We at the center really gain a lot, and we do hope that all the participants have learned something out of it. Sir, because of some time constraint, is it okay if we keep the questions at the end of the
Yes,
session, sir?
yes, absolutely. I am here. Yes, I'll be happy
So,
to take any questions. Yes,
thank
later.
you, sir. Now we'll
Thank
go
you.
to the next presenter. So your questions will come at the end of the session, sir. As second presenter, we have Mr. Amir Sajad Bhatt. He will be speaking on waste to energy, power potential and opportunities in Punjab, Pakistan. Mr. Bhatt is presently working in the capacity of Manager Renewable Biofuel, Punjab Power Development Board, Energy Department, Government of Punjab, Pakistan. He has 13 years of renewable energy project development experience, both in public sector as well as international development organizations. His key expertise is in development of biomass, biogas, waste to energy power project. He has attended number of seminars and workshops related to the waste to energy projects. He is a chemical engineer. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Amir Sajid Bhatt for his presentation. Yes, yes, sir. You can go ahead with your presentation, sir.
Okay, thank you for the brief introduction. My name is Ahmed Shahzad Bhatt. I'm Manager Renewables, Energy and Biofuels from Punjab Power Development Board, it's a province in Punjab, country of Pakistan. My basic emphasis would be to deliver what is happening in Pakistan renewable power sector and what are the linkages of waste to energy potential in Pakistan. And because I'm from the government side, so my key responsibility would also to describe what are the incentives for the private sector participation, especially for waste to energy power projects. Just would like to highlight what are the key stakeholders, the key power sectors, players in Pakistan. This would be my sequence of presentation. And then I would like to highlight, because we are working in the province and there is a relationship of the province and the federal. So what is happening in particular in Punjab and renewable power sector, and also for the waste to energy and waste management. And similarly, what are the missing links as far as the integrated solid waste management approach is concerned? Any regulations, or what are the current framework applicability? And then obviously the waste to power prospects and the very first initiative in private sector of approximately 40 megawatt waste energy power project at Lahore. What are the challenges, and what could be the way forward? As I mentioned, because I'm representing from the public sector, from the government of Punjab, so my duty is to just to briefly describe what are the key players in the Pakistan power sector. NAPRA is basically the regulator, and basically they issues the tariff and generation licenses, because early in 70s Pakistan power sector mainly depends on the large hydro, and Water and Power Development Authority was the key main player for organizing all those things. But in some early 80s, we feel some deterioration observed, demand supply shortfall started. In 90s, the budget constraints led the government to seek involvement of private sector in power generation projects. And similarly, in early 90s, the first facilitating agency in Pakistan who's dealing with the private sector power projects for generation side. Similarly, in that 90s, NTDC, National Transmission Dispatch Company Limited, was formed. Primarily objective was to provide secure, safe, and ensure system operator. And similarly, the CTPA was formed, the vertical body of NTDC. And then the grid connected renewable energy started in Pakistan in early 2003, where Alternative Energy Development Board from the federal side was established. And the basic emphasis on that basically for the wind power projects early. I can show you latest what are the exact profile of Pakistan power sector, the renewable, the wind, solar, the other resources. And then we come as a provincial facilitators in Punjab Power Development Board. Basically, Punjab has a 68% of consumption of electricity in Pakistan, over 200 million population. So we did a lot for the last 3-4 years, and we have our own policy as well. This is what the slide is. In terms of PPDB, some clarification in the constitution, and then we have our own power generation policy, because at certain stage some sovereign guarantees to be offered to the investors by the government of Pakistan, but at particular stage we join hands with the federal counterparts later for the development of power projects by the private sector. Just a brief, what we do actually, we deal with all technologies under our policy. the projects on both raw site and on the solicited mode. I mean, the investor should come and identify there is space or area and do the bankable feasibility. And the other part is that we do as a study, complete study, and then offer for the comparative bidding as in the later part. And there are certain fiscal incentives early, as I talk about for the renewable energy. The initial point, I mean, we have the IRR 17%. Similarly, the other tax-free import custom duty exemptions, and similarly for the other incentives, we also offer in line with the federal government. Just to highlight, it's not the subject, but just to show on that what Punjab did for Pakistan. I mean, there were a lot of conventional projects, some thermal and some LNG, but obviously the first 400 megawatt solar power projects, we have a balanced solar park in south of Punjab, and we have a success story this for the renewable power. Obviously the wind power sector, this the corridor regime in Sindh province, we also have a number of wind power projects. This is something the investment lined up with the Punjab Power Development Board, around about 7,000 megawatt of renewable power projects, all belongs for the thermal power projects, renewable power projects including solar, wind, waste to energy, some biomass, and some small hydro projects in Punjab. This is the show to the picture of the first coal power project in Pakistan. That was the first. Now actually this based on the imported coal actually, and now we are also starting as a local coal project as well. This is a picture of the solar power project in Solar Park. Just to indicate what is actually the installed capacity is of Pakistan. I mean, not in a good position, but as far as renewable is concerned, we are only 6%. I mean, of the installed capacity. Our thermal is 61%, 29% is the hydro. But now, for the last 1 and 2 years, the government of Pakistan is trying to increase the share of renewable power, and particularly solar, wind, and also for the waste to air energy. This is simple as the project development cycle because it's very important. I mean, to understand from the investor's perspective that what are the key steps that need to do. I think that presentation slide could probably useful for that angle. Let's come to the solid waste sector in Punjab. I mean, the first presenter already shown that the World Bank data analysis, I mean, that shows about 0.43 kg per capita consumption, but I feel that it's above 0.5. I mean, Pakistan Power Census 2018 shows the population is above 200 million, and the country's generation, solid waste generation, as per the World Bank report, is about 31 million tons per year. As I mentioned earlier, the Punjab, the largest province, I mean, it's more than 110 million, generates more municipal solid waste, including garbage, rubbish, and all those mixed solid waste. It's all those provinces. There is a point, I mean, for the large cities of Punjab, for the last 4 or 5 years, the waste management companies were established. I mean, this was particularly the key point. I mean, the local municipalities and authorities, primarily, they were taken apart, and the companies were formed to enhance basically the efficiency of collecting the waste, as well as transportation and transfer those waste to the dumping site. Obviously, I will tell about something on integrated solid waste management approach, which the first presenter already shown you show the triangle what should be actually done. I was talking about the waste management company, so the prime objective was obviously for the better collection and transportation, and obviously we have in sanitary landfill, but it's not fully sanitary landfill in Lahore, but mainly it's the dumping sites. Just to show you what is, because I'll talk about more on waste to energy power based on incineration. So just showing you that what is the actual solid waste data in Lahore. It's about 7,000 tons per day. And as I mentioned that the Lahore Waste Management Company has, done wonderful. Obviously, they kept apart, they outsourced and they invited private sector. And all the resource, the gadgets, the equipments, they provided significant impact, and their efficiency has been increased as far as collection is concerned. So the data shared by the LWMC, it's about 6,500 tons per day out of the 7,000 tons per day solid waste generation. I'm sure there are some commitments as far as LWMC, basically the custodian of municipal solid waste at Lahore. I mean, they are providing some RE plant to the cement factory. Obviously, they have some initiative for the compost plant. I'll show you basically the composition of the municipal solid waste, in particular Punjab and in Lahore, where the most of the fraction is belong to the biodegradable, more than 50%. This is because we offer some incentives for power generation. Obviously, waste to energy we consider as an environment project, not as an electricity beneficiary, because a lot of waste open dumping is providing a lot of danger to a lot of people, a lot of health, underground water, and all those things. So currently we are facilitating one of the Chinese private sector one project at the Lakote landfill site, and the fuel capacity would be about 2,000 tons per day. I will talk about later on that particular project. And because I'll tell you later on, the policy regime change in Pakistan from the feed-in tariff, cost plus tariff, now is the competitive bidding. It's all around Asia, I believe, I guess. So we shortly gonna invite investors at another material recovery facility at Sundar. The fuel assurance is about 3,000 tons per day. The significance of showing this numbers is that for any waste to energy power or any project, in particular waste to energy, there must be a connected strong fuel supply chain. Unless until there is no strong fuel supply chain, you cannot imagine for any biomass or any waste power or energy projects. This is basically a very basic, a general picture. Can normally see as the first presenter show that we should focus actually the waste reduction at source. The principle of 3 R's, the reduce, reuse, and recycle, is actually the key. We need to focus that, and we need to develop actually, and we need to disseminate this information right from start, from home, domestic, from education. That look, the more population, the more we organize, the more urban population, and the more waste generation. So the government and private sector and all other concerned stakeholders need to focus on the minimization of waste generation, and then obviously the other parameter comes into play. The waste composition, that recycling or treatment. So this is basically a picture that how waste is managed actually. The waste being segregated at source, and then it goes transfer from either private sector or from the local municipalities. Then obviously it goes to the transfer stations. They are basically the primary need for the temporary storage. The first collection primary point is near to the domestic or the commercial institutions or industry, and the intermediate storage of transfer stations, where the other developed countries we have seen some segregation and some other waste recovery material as well. And then it transferred to the to the landfill or the dumping site. So this is basically a very generic picture of waste management. This is the point actually we need to be very focused on that integrated solid waste management approach. As I said earlier, the waste avoidance is the key. And obviously the waste minimization, the basic principle of 3 R's, the less we sorted or segregated or waste or reuse, then obviously the generation part is primarily belongs what is going to happen to this waste. Either is going to compost, either is going to be recycled. Obviously that depends on the composition of the waste. And then obviously the technical methods to be applied, the biological conversion, the thermochemical conversion, or the chemical conversion, or the biofuels, it's all being applied on the processing and materials recovery. And very less waste should go to the disposal or the landfill site. So this is basically the whole approach. I will briefly explain you that what actually are the gaps for what has been done in actually Punjab, and especially in Lahore, for the Lahore Waste Management Company. Initially, there were local municipalities, and the collection efficiencies were very poor. The waste was everywhere. But all of a sudden, 4 or 5 years back, then the funding being provided by the government of Punjab, and then the model being replicated from one country, and the waste sector was in Punjab and Lahore was outsourced. So primarily there are some gaps, but there are something which has been done already. So the institutional capacity of Lahore Waste Management Company was established. Professional peoples were inducted, and primarily some resources were provided. So I guess, because currently what is happening, that all of the mixed solid waste is being collected from all over the city, and it is being transferred into the transfer stations, and it is then transferred into the open landfill or the dumping site. Unfortunately, that waste is creating a lot of hazards. But one part has been done as far as the collection is concerned, but obviously the segregation part has not been done, which is actually required for the waste treatment, either for the recycling or composting based on the composition of the waste, which I'll show you later. So I was talking about the one part, the generation and the collection transportation. Then obviously the awareness, as I told earlier, that it's a basic, it's very significant. It needs to be started from the household, from the education, and from all relevant stakeholders. They need to know, because unfortunately, this part of the world, we feel that this waste is as a facility. Actually, this is not. This is actually the professional service. This needs to be taken care of in terms of giving excellent service by the companies or the local municipalities to collect that waste. So awareness should be given at all level. Then obviously the missing link is that there is some composting part as well, but not, because a lot of waste, which I'll show you the next slide, that the biodegradable, more than 50%. So we need to be very focused on that particular point for composting and recycling. And as first presenter already mentioned, that the illegal scavenging is done in this part of the world, and the sector is not been regularized, and we need to be very focused and need to give some guidelines for this purpose. Some portion has been done for the RDF as well, and for incineration for waste to energy is been just initiated. Obviously, the lacking point is the guidelines. No actual waste policy is available as far as the legal regulatory framework is concerned. Obviously, there are some initial guidelines that's being enforced by the city district government. Obviously, the sustainability is the key. I mean, you cannot sustain for a longer period for the government funding. So there is a proposal actually which is going to be implemented, especially in Punjab and in other part of the cities, that this service being charged to the consumer, to the domestic, industrial, or institutional. So I mean, this way, the company efficiency and sustainability could come into the picture. Or will some part I just talked about the mixed municipal solid waste, but the hospital waste and the industrial waste. I mean, industrial waste um, is being managed by the industry like pulp and paper industry and some other waste as well. But the hospital waste is being managed in this in Lahore particular. There are some incinerators for dealing with that, the infectious and other waste. This hospital waste is not mixed with the municipal solid waste, mixed municipal solid waste being dumped at the landfill or dumping site. This is actually the numbers. It's a reference-based characterization study. It was talking about more than 55% the biodegradable waste, and this is where the ISWM framework goes. I mean, you need to have a more composting probably after the segregation at the source, and which is actually not happening. But a little portion is being done for this site. And similarly for the combustible and the textile, the nylon part, the RDF part is about 30%. Obviously, some recycle, you can see that the paper cardboard is already be scavenging. The glass, metal, and the other part is being dumped onto the dumping site. So this is actually the numbers of the waste characterization of Lahore city. This slide is basically just to give a hope to the investors if they are interested for the mixed municipal solid waste to treat with the incineration or any other technology for the power generation. So the average calorific value is basically around 1500 kilocal per kg. But obviously the moisture contents are on a high side. So there are technologies available, like instance in China and some part of India as well. I mean, China is leading that. The one solution, one part could be the filled landfill or the dumping sites. They can be managed. In Turkey, I've seen that the waste to energy plants at that landfill site. So one option could be to incinerate, but obviously there are some gray areas like the missing links in the policy as well for this is actually the prospects. I'm just talking about the why waste to energy is essential, because I told you that one of the dumping sites has already been closed in Lahore because of the full application of the ISWM framework. But obviously, and the other is now operational. So we cannot afford this kind of picture for anymore in future. So this has obviously the serious threat to the environmental. Obviously, as far as the methane gas emissions from these dumping sites is seriously in danger to the public in large, and for the underground water as well. So these dumping sites is a serious challenge for the government, that how to eradicate this kind of stuff. Just showing you the picture. The one part of that landfill site is Carrolled, where the methane gas is going to be recovered, but most of the part is being open dumping. So you see the 13 million ton waste is already dumped and that site is closed, and the other is going to be, but in that particular, there is a rehabilitation process is being done. And the other side, I'm showing you on the right side, the first waste to energy park project will be placed in that particular location. Basically, these are the prospects. I mean, we have a lot of waste. So as I mentioned that we cannot we see this project as environmental projects. I mean, the ultimate advantage could be that scientific disposal and the reduction of municipal solid waste. I mean, the power generation could be the additional benefit. And obviously, I mean, if waste to energy in any MRF or material recovery facility site that could save a public land, obviously that could be used for the dumping or for the landfill site. So this is very important that some of the technologies either could be applied for the waste to energy. Um, Key benefits, obviously, when the waste could be reduced and dumped, or it could be converted into any recovery form. That obviously the air quality improvements, the less health risks, and obviously the water table could be I mean it's no would be protected, and obviously the hazardous of the dumping landfill sites. I mean they could have a long life, environmentally better life.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, is it possible to wind up a bit earlier as next presentation?
Yes, please. I'm just take only 2 to 3 minutes. Sorry for that, my delay.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. This is, I just like to brief why waste to energy project at Lahore being initiated as the strong waste supply chain in Lahore. I mean, they showed the willingness to supply more than 2,000 tons per day of solid waste. We have our own policy and incentives, and based on that, the private sector has shown keen interest on the fuel supply willingness by the LWMC. Then obviously the bankable feasibility study was done. The important thing was the key regulator NAPRA. They announced the upfront feed-in tariff. I mean, this is something which is very attractive for the private sector investor. The current tariff is basically 9.82 US cents per kilowatt hour. So this has been accepted by the company. Just wanted to show you the possible waste to power potential in Punjab. As I mentioned you earlier that the LWMC, the waste generation and the collection, similarly for the Faisalabad, the Gujranwala, the Multan, Rawalpindi. So it's about 150 to 200 megawatt if we talk about purely mixed municipal solid waste based on incineration. The challenges and the limiting factors, obviously, mixed solid waste. I mean, it's contain all mostly biodegradable C&D waste as well. So a lot of the waste has to be come back again. I mean, we can't afford C&D waste to be incinerated or gasified actually. And similarly, the scavenging of high calorific value waste. I mean, this part needs to be done. I mean, some policy framework and some implementation to see what kind of regulations need to be done. Similarly, waste assurance limitation. As I told you earlier, that in Lahore there is the collection efficiency is more than 95%, and some other cities are following them. But again, this is the challenge to supply exactly the quantity of waste for power generation. The tipping fee is the challenge. Actually, this is being provided in China and some part of India as well. I mean, we need basically because a lot of solid waste is being dumped on the open dumping side on the landfill side, and there is some other cost. So we need to offset that cost in particular to compensate for the power generation tariff. So this part we are working on, and we can also offer that particular point for the tipping fee. Some challenges in the upfront tariff is that only the 50 megawatt ceiling fixed by the regulator. So for next project at Chandar, we will definitely invite on competitive bidding because we've been approached by a lot of investors to they are ready to work on that particular tariff. Similarly, the challenge is that the upfront tariff regime in Pakistan has already been exhausted, and the introduction of comparative bidding has been started. So there is new policy at federal level is going to come in a few days. So let's see, what kind of incentives they are offering. It's a success in regional countries. So as I mentioned that China is way ahead as far as the installation of waste to energy power concerned. Similarly, India has gone through a lot of projects, and some other regional countries like Thailand, Turkey, and Japan also established waste to energy projects. In Pakistan, we just started. That would be the first of its kind in projects in Pakistan, and which is actually at the development stage, the agreement stage, and the 60 megawatt, the next would be on the comparative bidding basis. We are hopeful. The private sector already shown keen interest for waste energy projects in Punjab, and we hope the private sector should chip in and do the wonder here in Punjab. Thank you very much. This is from my side. Thank you very much. Mr. Bhaskar, can you listen to me? And the question answer session will start now, or it would be later?
Thank you so much, sir, for your presentation. We had so much to learn from your presentation. Sir, question and answer we will keep in the end. So next, we are moving to the next presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Our next presenter is Dr. Gangari Rao. He will be speaking on bioenergy from organic fraction of municipal solid waste and leachate. Dr. A.G. Rao is basically a chemical engineer specialized in area of waste management. Presently, he is working as a chief scientist and professor in CSIR, Indian Institute of Chemical Technology, Hyderabad, in Environmental Engineering and Fossil Fuel Division. He has 28 years of experience in reputed industries, consultancies, and R&D organizations. Dr. Rao is known for translational research, and he developed and implemented several technologies in the area of environmental engineering to the industries and societal application. Dr. Rao bestowed with several awards and served as international consultant. He is a member of several prestigious government committees on renewable energy, waste management, etc. With this, I would like to invite Dr. Rao for his presentation.
Hello?
Hello, sir. You can go ahead with your presentation, sir.
Yeah, namaste to all of you. I'll be generally speaking about just scenario of MSW in India and followed by what could be possible solutions, and that seems very workable solutions. So that is my idea of this webinar actually. Uh, Generally, this is the data what we are getting from our Google search. I did know approximately 62 million tons as per the 2015 data. This is actually tons of waste is generated in India. I think now presently approximated is 80 to 90 million tons. But as Rahul said, collection is very, very poor, not very, very good actually. And it is mostly going to the open dumping. And there are situations where I think it is going to the landfills also. But primarily, waste is here actually organic waste. Primarily, 60 to 50 to 60% is biodegradable organic waste actually in India. So that is the reason why this calorific value is low, very, very low compared to the Western countries. Maximum calorific value is only 1650, and generally average calorific value is only 1070. Minimum is 1000 and 1200 is the average calorific value. So today, so this calorific value makes the sense in terms of what is the technology we have to adapt it actually. There is a big question mark for this Indian context actually. So there are so many technologies being followed in the different parts of India. One is landfill, refuse derived fuel, mass incineration, biomethanation, and biomine. So primarily, what they are doing is that most of the waste in cities through transfer stations being sent to one dumping site where all the recycles are removed and RDP is produced with high calorific values too, and organic waste is composted, and the results are completely sent to the landfill. This is generally what is being followed in the in the Indian context with respect to the practice of landfilling. So, but recently, what happened actually, in order to generate the power from this MSW, there is a technology called mass burning has been adopted, and there are three plants in India presently working 20 megawatt plants. One is Delhi, two in Delhi, another one in Jabalpur. The one is by Ramki, another is by Island FS, third is by actually Jindal. So three plants, 20 megawatt plants are mass burning technology. That means that highlights of this technology is that no, we need not segregate the waste. A total waste can go to the burning mass burning system. But the issue is that this is the closed scheme actually. The issue is that no, the boiler generate a lot of toxic gases. That includes dioxins also. So therefore, people are not happy who are living around. So despite the fact that companies claiming that no, these emissions are being treated, but people are not happy. So many cases are pending in courts, and that's why these projects are becoming a great burden for the entrepreneurs who have installed actually, and they could not run the project despite the fact that each project approximately 1,000 crores has been invested. So that is one of the biggest issues. So meanwhile, Government of India, what has done is that in 2016, they have already a mechanism that is called solid waste management rules, and they are asking everybody to segregate the waste at source, and they mandated it, and they have to resource recovery that is very important at source. So this is what. So all biodegradable waste needs to be say source segregated, used for some purpose like biomethanation or composting. So that is the what the mandate of the government, and most of the places like Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Delhi, this is being aggressively followed, source segregation. So in this context, no, remunerative decentralized solid waste management system is very essential because government of India has started a program called Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. So in this context also, the source segregation and evolving a decentralized solid waste management system, which is very remunerative, very important. So as I told you, the source segregation is happening in many cities. It is a big task, of course, for the municipal bodies and civic bodies. But despite that fact that because of severe competition in India created by government of India, they're they're giving awards and all these things for source segregation for municipal bodies and all these things. So they have created three bin system where like green is like meant for organic waste. So it is happening in Hyderabad also almost to the extent of 60 to 70%. So if you look at this organic waste itself, approximately 20 million, 25 million tons of organic waste is generated. Really, if it is purposefully used, we can replace LPG of 5-3% in the national perspective because we are importing LPG, we are importing crude and all these things, India. So it is worth generating biogas or bio-CNG with this organic waste and replace the LPG or conventional, for example, bio-CNG, something like that. So that is the thought process going across. And in this context, as I told you, decentralized waste management systems play a very crucial role. So as you know, bioenergy can be generated in comparison to the composting. If you do anaerobic digestion, that is called biomethanation. So that is the beauty of this process actually. So this is a scheme. And so many waste like vegetable and agriculture waste, parts of animals, poultry litter, fish that we cannot eat, etc. Human and animal weeds such as water acid. All these substrates are available for biomethanation, biogas generation, or composting. But most of these in a place in India, since waste is not segregated, no, it is getting collected along with other waste, plastics and other recyclable waste also. That is a big issue. So segregation is a very important criteria for making these technologies to happen. Uh, as many of you know, India is one of the country where aggressively implements this biogas program. This is called Gobar gas program. So in villages, no, they generate biogas from this cattle manure, and they'll use that biogas for cooking purposes. Therefore, this program is very, very aggressively, and approximately 12 million digesters are in India. But unfortunately, this design of these digesters is not very well engineered. So due to this fact, no, most of the plants are abandoned. Some plants are only got repaired and being used regularly. Otherwise, these digesters are useful for only cattle manure, only for lower capacity. So these digesters cannot be used for higher capacity or for other waste like food waste, marketable waste, poultry, etc. So, so as I told you, these are the problems, technical problems. Because of that, no, choking of the digester, since there is no mixing mechanism and all these things, digester gets damaged like this, and it is finally being abandoned. So that is the way these results are. So we need to look at the very competitive design and efficient design to make this program successful for other wastes also, like organic fraction of MSW, market and vegetable waste, food waste, etc. So in this context, we have looked at our institute has looked at seriously what are the technologies digesters available across India, and we found that there are high rate digesters available, which are like very efficient in terms of organic loading rate, in terms of VS reduction, biogas yield, and all these things, and they're mechanized to great extent also. So we therefore what we have developed, we have kept a challenge of research challenge 10 years back, that now all our conventional digesters should be made to high rate digesters, or whatever being new digesters are implemented should be high rate digesters only. We should stop implementing this conventional digester so that the biogas program will be successful. So this is the research challenge we took almost 12 years, 10 to 12 years back, and we have developed a digester. So these are the variety of parameters which are important for biomethanation, outcome parameter. And we developed a digester called anaerobic gas lift reactor. And this digester is very, very compact and easier to scale up and multiply, and higher biogas yield and generation of organic fertilizer, and remunerated for different applications, and we can generate employment also. So this is the digester what we have developed actually after extensive research, and this digester were promoting under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan program promulgated by Government of India. So what is waste is coming from kitchen, can use it for generation of LPG. The LPG can be used in the kitchen. The biomanure can be used for growing vegetables, which can come back to the kitchen. So the philosophy is waste to energy from kitchen to kitchen, and it is a very remunerative system. That is what we are propagating aggressively. So these digesters, several places were implemented. There is Akshay Patra Foundation in India, which serves the midday meal program to school children and all. They have got approximately 40 kitchens. Each kitchen generates approximately 1 ton of food waste. Almost 20 places we have installed these plants. From 1 ton of food waste, we are generating approximately 150 meter cube of biogas, which is replacing approximately 60 kg per day of LPG. So all these places, and biomanure is used in the same place for like gardening, landscaping, and all these things. So several places these digesters are working, and even in our own institute also, one small digester we installed for a canteen, and we are giving biogas to replace the LPG in our canteen. We are practicing and telling others to also practice. And now this campaign is going aggressively, and hopefully I think next 1 or 2 years, no, this digester from 20 now will have to make it 100 digesters. And there are some players who are implementing similar solutions with different designs. To great extent, we are also very, very successful, like any other private entrepreneur in Government of India. So these are the different digesters capacities which can happen. What is the space and all this? How much biogas we can keep? This that is the advantage. The very compact digester, the digesters also very, very less space also. Even in gated community apartments also we can implement these solutions, and the people can use the biogas, which is very remunerative. So that is the idea of implementing these things. And in the same context, we are also working out to try to implement this technology for organic fraction of MSW in one of the dumping sites. And we have installed 5-ton plant. We are generating power from organic fraction of MSW, MSW leach, and the power is being used for operating equipment in the same premises actually. This is the 5 ton per day capacity plant which is funded under Indo-US Science and Technology program, and this is successfully operated. And now government would like to replicate this model for small municipalities where there is approximately 10 to 15 tons of solid waste generated, so that the power can be generated for lighting, etc., or the biogas can be used for communities. So this program is aggressively being practiced. And similarly, another 10-ton plant in a market yard in Hyderabad generates approximately 10 tons of marketed vegetable waste. We are implementing same solution also, so that it will be replicated in marketed vegetable waste. This means essentially wherever the organic waste is generated, try to implement the solution there itself, so that now it is not being transported to larger distance, so that we can save on fuel, transportation, and exposing the workers to all these menace and all these things. So that is the idea of these decentralized solutions. Hopefully, these solutions will pick up very, very fast actually. So another solution is that even small apartments, small digesters like homes and all, we can put small digester. For example, treating 5 kg, 10 kg, 25 kg like that, up to 100 kg. We have developed another digester called Bio Home. And a woman can, if you can see the figure, a woman can use this digester in the kitchen. Every day she can feed that waste generated in the kitchen and she can use the biogas. So this is very, very convenient. Now we are planning to promote this product actually. Here in government of Telangana, Hyderabad, there is a Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation. We are trying to implement this solution, and we'll, I think, possibly if it is tested well, then we can sell this product also aggressively, so that waste is renewably used in the same kitchen where it is generated. So the organic fraction of municipal solid waste need not be transported to some places. Manure and biogas can be generated at the same place also, same place only. So another solution is that we can do composting also. So these people who are not interested in biogas elimination, composting also can be done. And we have developed a method called accelerated anaerobic composting. Like aerobic composting, it gives smell and all these things. So now we have under anaerobic conditions, we have developed this composting method. And this method is very, very superior in terms of within 20-22 days, you can make the compost using the microbial consortia and the process parameters which are being implemented here. And we also made water hyacinth is very, very much grown in these lakes and all these things. We made compost from this water hyacinth. Now one entrepreneur we have developed actually, one of the lake we have cleaned completely. We made compost using this accelerated anaerobic composting method. Approximately 250 to 300 tons of manure is being made. Now we are selling that manure at the rate of rupees 30 rupees kilo, which is very, very good for soils and organic manure and all these things. And this we were aggressively promoting this technology also. A lot of entrepreneurs are coming. And even if you put 50 kg, what could be the method of all these things we have discussed. And this compost we have tested. There is Indian standard called Fertilizer Control Organization in India for testing the standards of biomanure. So we got it tested also, and we found that this manure is much, much superior than the regular manure which is being developed using vermicomposting and regular composting method. So that is what I mentioned in the listing. So a lot of societal impact these projects also get, and we can give very simpler solutions for complex problems. So that is the idea of it. And I think I'm little faster because now I have to finish by 1 o'clock. So I would like to thank all of you for this, and any questions you can please let me know or send me email because I have to leave now for some other meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
It is another wonderful presentation, sir. We have, of course, we have a lot of questions for you, but I think you are running out of time. So we will be sending those questions to you through email, sir, so that we can give it to the participants.
Yes,
And
sir.
secondly, sir, it would be helpful if you can share your presentation slides with us, sir, so that we
No
can
problem.
distribute.
I'll right away send you the mail to you. My presentation PPT I'll send to you. Good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your time, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
And now we'll move to the next presenter. The next presenter is Mr. Sunil Prasad Lohani from Nepal. He will be on prospect of waste to bioenergy in Nepal. Dr. Sunil Prasad Lohani has over a decade of experience in renewable energy education, training and research in Nepal and international arena. Dr. Lohani has actively been involved in the field of biomass and solar energy research and consulting assignments and collaborates with national and international partners. He has also served as a program committee member in international conferences, serves as reviewer for several journals and has published about 30 journals and conference proceedings. He has BE in mechanical engineering. And with this, I would like to invite Dr. Sunil Prasad Lohani for his presentation. Yes, sir. You can go ahead with your presentation, sir. Hello, sir. Hello.
Hello.
You can go
Sorry.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bhaskar. As Bhaskar already introduced me, so I'll just directly go to my presentation. I'm talking about prospects of waste to bioenergy in Nepal. So it's just a brief overview of our waste condition and potential energy recovery from the waste. So let me start with our overall energy scenario in Nepal. So the overall energy scenario, you can see in the slide that biomass energy covers almost 78% of our primary energy. And out of that primary energy, which covers 78%, out of that 80% energy consumes in residential sector. And that is mainly for cooking. So that means you can imagine the use of biomass, and that is mostly in traditional way. And that obviously cause indoor air pollution, and then inefficient technologies are there because our traditional stoves are not efficient. So it obviously cause huge deforestation and all inefficient aspects. So indoor air pollution that also cause about 23,000 annual death in Nepal. So that means it's a huge crisis, in fact, basically in the thermal energy sector in Nepal. So if we have some alternatives to replace this biomass energy with some clean fuels or clean energy, then that could save lots of lives in the country, as well as that could also make sustainable forest. I mean, there won't be any high pressure in the forest. So with this background, sorry. Sorry, the slides is not. Okay. With this background, let me start with the waste. So as you already know, I mean, several of previous speakers have already talked about waste. So waste is generally the rubbish, which is unwanted material that we don't want, and we have to anyhow manage that waste. So so far we only talk about waste and we consider it as waste. But recent years, even in the South Asia, we are more cautious with recovering the resources from the waste. And waste is not only the waste; it has some economic resources or it has some economic values. So how to convert that waste into bioenergy or maybe thermal energy? So we can understand that waste has some resources. So let's take it as a resource. And the different types of waste are available, basically municipal, agriculture, and industry waste. And here I will only mostly talk about municipal and agriculture waste. So municipal waste, there is a significant fraction of organic waste are available in Nepal, almost 60%. And human excreta, that means the sewage sloughs or fecal sloughs, that is also potential biomass for converting it into bioresources or bioenergy. And agricultural waste, mostly manure, poultry waste, that are also available in the country. So in Nepal, you can see in the slide, average municipal solid waste generation that is around 0.32 kg per capita. And that means the total urban areas. I'm only concentrating about, only concentrating about the urban waste, because in rural areas, solid waste could be managed by household themselves, because they have their cattle and pigs and other animals. So there is not much pressure to manage the solid waste. But in urban areas, there is huge crisis or huge um, um, problem to manage the solid waste. And total solid waste generation is about 631,000 tons per year, and about 60% is organic fraction. And the problem, the amount of problem you can see on the slide, on the picture, because when there are some problem on the dumping sites, then all the waste are straight around the city, around the street. So that makes nuisance of course, and that also cause pollution, health problems, and all these things. And we have also cattle farms around, it's a commercial cattle farms around 3,400, and waste generation from all these cattle farm, the preliminary estimate shows around 160 tons per year. And also the poultry farms, you can see the number of birds is around 47 million. And when we estimate it with the minimum amount of droppings, that could around 500,000 tons per year. So these are basically the main biomass resources, and that are causing serious problem in the management of this biomass, or in the management of this waste. So poultry farm, they are having a huge problem in the management of their waste. Cattle farms as well, there is a problem. Solid waste, you can see, it's really a problem in all countries in South Asia. So with these resources, what can we do? So here I will basically talk about converting into biogas. So there must be three different components. We have to be very cautious in converting these resources into biogas. So just have a look. Process chain of anaerobic digestion of biowaste. There is a substrate chain, transformation, and product chain. So substrate chain, that means the collection of all organic waste, transport, and if some waste needs some pre-treatment, so that has to be ensured. If there is no regular supply of waste, then your digester doesn't produce biogas, and that project will going to be failed. So substrate chain has to be ensured, and transformation is anaerobic digestion technology. So there are some factors that has to be ensured to operate the anaerobic digestion smoothly. And after that, there is a product chain. And product chain, that means after anaerobic digestion, you will get biogas and digest it. And biogas, either it needs post-treatment or directly we can utilize, depending on the situation where we are using the biogas. And if there is no proper preparation or planning of the utilization of biogas from the plant, then that makes a serious problem. Similarly, the digestate. If we do not have proper planning how to use the digestate or slurry from the digester, and there is also the big problem. So we have to make sure substrate chain, transformation, and product chain before planning the project, or before planning the waste management or biomass management. And this is just a few such technical process in the transformation. In transformation process, there are basically 4 different processes, which I think is not necessary to talk here. So I'll just skip these slides. And once you have biogas from the anaerobic digestion, so that biogas means you have different gases, mixture of different gases, which you obtain from anaerobic digestion of biowaste. And that gases basically contains methane, carbon dioxide, and other trace elements. And our main fuel is methane, and that is around 60% to 65% methane we can get from our anaerobic digestion process, and around 30%, 35% is carbon dioxide. And that methane is our main fuel resources. And if we compare the biogas with other fuels, you can see biogas, 1 meter cube of biogas is equivalent to 0.4 kg of butane or propane. That means which is nearly the LPG gases. So 1 meter cube biogas can replace 0.4 kg of LPG gas, which is very popular in our area, the LPG cylinder. So with these figures, what I would like to do is one quick estimation for biogas plants. So we have organic fraction of waste, that is municipal waste, is around 630,000 tons. Cattle manure around 160,000 tons, and poultry droppings is around 500,000 tons. So with this huge amount of waste, what we can do? This is the resources, and this is the potential for converting these resources into bioenergy or biogas. So let us have a look with a quick estimation. For example, if we have 1 ton per day digestion, that means our digester could have potential of converting biomass into biogas 1 ton per day. So investment in the biogas plant is around 50 to 70% is for these technologies, and the rest is for land and project development and all these things. So let us assume, which is also reasonable figure, that digester per ton 2 million Nepalese rupees per ton, and operation cost is around 1 to 2% of the investment cost. So that comes around 2.2 million rupees per year total cost. And the feeding material, we have basically 3 different feeding materials: cattle dung, municipal waste, and poultry droppings. So if we estimate based from 1 ton, and it has certain total solid and volatile solid, and with this figure, what we can obtain biogas, what we can obtain from cattle dung is around 50 meter cube biogas per day, municipal waste 75 meter cube, and poultry around 95 meter cube biogas per day. But this estimation is at very low side, so we can get up to 100 to 150 meter cube biogas per day from this waste, basically from municipal waste or food waste. And also cattle dung and poultry waste is also, here I am estimating, this estimation is at the low side, so we can have higher potential from this waste. So with this analysis, what I wanted to do is for estimation for the whole waste available in Nepal. So the estimated figure shows cattle, municipal, and poultry waste that almost 9,350 ton per year biogas can be produced from cattle dung, which is equivalent to LPG cylinder equivalent. That LPG cylinder is around 40.2 kg cylinder, that equivalent of 285,000 cylinder per year. And from municipal waste, we can have around 999,000. That means around 1 million cylinder per year can be replaced. Similarly, for poultry waste, we can replace around 1.7 million cylinder per year. And if we convert that into the monetary terms or revenue, we have all together, you can say, and also we have huge potential of producing fertilizer. These solids are all fertilizer. So altogether, you can see we have around 4 billion Nepalese rupees equivalent LPG cylinder that could replace. That means this amount could be saved inside the country, because all LPG cylinders we are importing from other countries. We don't have our own LPG resources within the country. So we can have around 4 million rupees equivalent revenue. And fertilizer, which I have estimated with very low price per kg, just around 10-11 rupees. So that could also give around 5 billion rupees equivalent. And your investment cost for this whole waste, which is around 3,000 ton per day altogether, including solid, cattle, and poultry, the investment cost could be 30 to 60 billion, depending on the technology and the manufacturer of the technology. It could be around 30 to 60 billion construction cost of the biogas plant. That means we could see revenue around 10 billion and the cost around 5-6 billion. So our payback is around 4 to 5 years, so which is not bad. So this shows the potential of waste that are available in this country can be converted into bioenergy or biogas. And so far, we don't have any energy tapped from these resources because we have lots of biogas, small domestic biogas plant, but that domestic biogas plant is operated from the individual household cattle rearing. They have 2 to 4 cow or buffaloes, and they use their own waste from their cattle rearing, and also they sometimes they connect their toilets, and that operates the domestic biogas plants. But large biogas plant, we have very few, which I'll just show you in the next slides. So biogas plants in Nepal, you can see the history, like first installed in 1955 AD. That means it's almost 60, 70 years, 60, 65 years ago. And at that time, they started with 200-liter oil drum digester with a separate drum as a gas holder. And now, from 1995 to now, almost 400,000 biodigester, these domestic biodigester are installed in the country. And this domestic biodigester size, basically 4, 8, and 10 meter cube are mostly popular. And out of this, also 6 meter cube, which is missing here, 4, 6, 8, and 10 meter cube are mostly popular in Nepal. So this digester, household biodigester, basically we have GGC model, which we called, and that is the fixed dome digester, which is originally developed in China and modified. Some modification has been done, and they name it as a GGC 2047 model, and which is very popular in Nepal. And the available size is now 4 to 20, also up to 50 meter cube. We can have this digester, but very popular size is, as I already said, 4 to 6 meter cube. And these biodigesters are well functioning, except with some exceptions, and it is also providing alternatives for biomass. It's also providing clean energy as an alternatives of biomass. Also, there are some urban household biogas technology, which is also called urban biodigester. And at one time in Nepal, they tried to mimic one digester, which has developed by Aarti in India, and they named it as SAARC Gharelu Biogas Plant. And they tried to implement it in some parts of the country, and basically in Kathmandu. But this plant has not been functional, or this plant was not successful, or their project was not successful. And there was some reason why this plant was not successful in Kathmandu. And this has been now not popular, not used in the country. So what we can say is we do not have urban biodigester at this moment in this country. So there is huge potential of providing urban biodigester for almost 2 to 3 million people who lives in the city. So to address this problem, Kathmandu University Bioenergy Laboratory is also working to develop appropriate model and process of urban biodigester for Nepalese context. And before this presentation, the previous presenter has also showed some digester they have developed in their laboratory. So we could have some common output in the end. So there are also some biogas plants that are operated with poultry waste, poultry droppings, but these biogas plants are also very less in number. That means very few poultry farms are operating biodigester, or they are converting their waste into biogas. Otherwise, they are dumping their waste in a either in river or some other places, and they are causing huge problem in their surrounding. So we could have few poultry biogas plants. We have few plants in the country, but there are also huge potential to construct biogas plant that can be operated by poultry droppings. And we have few large biogas plant also in Nepal, and one plant is in Sangja, which has the size is around 3,500 meter cube, and that can turn 40 tons of poultry litter or cow dung into biogas. So it addresses 40 ton per day, but unfortunately this plant is not very successfully operated at this moment. And we have another plant which is now recently in the operation, and also some parts are under construction. So this plant also capture around 45 tons of waste, and their main food, their main feeding material is poultry, cow dung, and food waste, and basically poultry and cow dung. They are talking about, I mean, they are planning to use food waste, but due to some other problems, they are not feeding at the moment. The food waste is not feeding at the moment. And we have another plant which is very successfully running, and that is in Nawalparasi, Nepal. And their potential is 25 tons of waste. They are converting into biogas, and their main feeding substrate is press-mud, poultry waste, and cow dung. It's a co-digestion, and they have provision that they make feeding strategy for a week, and they forecast it, and then they feed depending on the condition of the digester and the feeding material. And their end products are, I mean, they are not using their biogas directly to the community, or they are not converting into electricity. They are bottling. I mean, it's a kind of replacement of LPG cylinder. They use the end product is used for bottling and used for industry, hotel, restaurant, and schools. And according to them, there is huge demand, and people are asking more and more cylinders, but they cannot provide as per the demand. So all these shows we have very few large biogas plants, but we have huge potential, which I have shown earlier. We have large biogas plant which can cater around 100 to 120 ton of waste per day, but our waste is around, total waste is around 3,000 tons per day. So there is huge potential of installing large biogas plant as well as urban household biodigester, which can cater urban household energy needs at the kitchen. And large biogas plant can cater the, I mean, can replace the cylinder, LPG cylinder. The huge amount of LPG cylinder can be replaced. So my main intention is to show the potential of installing biogas plant in Nepal. And there are also some arguments that people are talking about composting and biogas or anaerobic digestion. These two are sometimes people are confused, and people are asking why we should go for biogas, why not composting. So my simple answer is, you know, composting, through composting you will get fertilizer, but if you use the same resources into the anaerobic digester, you can have biogas as a byproduct. That means you recover energy from that waste, and as a byproduct you will have also biodigester. I mean, you will have also digested. That means output slurry, and that slurry can be composted as a fertilizer. If you use that slurry as a vermicompost, feeding material for the vermicompost, you have really back gold you will get out of that. So that could be a good fertilizer. So why not you recover energy out of that, and also you will have byproduct as a fertilizer is available there. So my tentative idea or my suggestion is better to recover energy available in the bioresources as well. And now let me talk about the large importance of large biogas plant operation, because sometimes what happens, large biogas plant operator are not very professional, and they invest for the plant, but they could not run it successful. And there are few steps that has to be followed to operate the large biogas plants. So large biogas plant itself is not plug and go device. We have to feed it carefully, nurse it when it is not well. So most importantly, they should have some laboratory. They have to measure all chemical parameters like TS, BS, BFA, PS, CN ratio, and then they have to manage, they have to provide the favorable environment to the digester or inside the digester, so that our feeding material can easily converted into biogas. So all microorganisms available in the biodigester, in the reactor, they need favorable conditions, just like other creatures or other animals. For example, we need some favorable environment to exist. Similarly, microorganisms need favorable environment, and that has to be ensured by ourselves. So we have to combine different substrate, different feeding materials. We have to manage, I mean, we have to maintain certain temperature, all these things. So that is very important. And continuous monitoring of the plant. These days, for the large biogas plant, we have a SCADA system. So using this SCADA system, we can immediately pay attention of any fault or any problem in the plant. So this is very important to run the large biogas plant. So with this very brief presentation, I will end my presentation here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Doctor, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. It is such an informative one, and we got so much from it. Well, there are many questions from participants. We will be trying to ask a few, starting with you. So one of my colleagues has some questions for you. Hope you will
Sure.
be.
Thank you very much, Sunil, for your very nice presentation. This is SN Javed. I'm a research fellow here.
Okay.
So my question
Nice.
to you is, you have talked a lot about the household biogas digesters. So, and then you have touched a little bit on the large biogas plants running in your country. So, is
Yeah.
there any mechanism or any regulatory provision given by the government for producing electricity and selling it back to the utility from those big biogas digesters? And secondly, what do you do with the inorganic waste content in your country? You have talked a lot about the organic waste, but is there any mechanism for the inorganic waste deposition or something like that, incineration plant or anything like that in your country?
Okay, thank you, Javed. Regarding your first question, that regulatory system, actually, we have just one plant biogas out of these three large biogas plant, which I have shown. One plant was trying to convert biogas into electricity, but their plant is not successfully running at the moment. But the provision from the government is like we can produce biogas from or other technology, and we can buy, I mean, we can sell our electricity to the national grid, and they have some fixed price. They set some fixed price, and with that price, we can sell our electricity to the grid. But at this moment, biogas sector is not well developed, or they are not in a position to sell electricity to the grid, and that provision is basically useful for solar and hydropower sector at this moment. And that's why I was talking, there are huge potential, but those potential are not tapped in Nepal. And regarding your second question, inorganic waste, here I'm talking about, or I was talking about organic fraction of the waste that can be converted into bioenergy. Inorganic fraction cannot be converted. That means I have only shown you the organic fraction or organic part of the waste, or I talked only organic part. The problem is our waste management sector, or our waste management sector is very poor. All our waste from the city, they collect it. There is no segregation provision. They simply collect it, the mixed waste, and they dump it. There is some landfill site, they call it, but when I visited some of the landfill sites, but I would rather say the dumping site, not the landfill site as well, not the sanitary landfill site. So all waste are dumped somewhere. So that means at the moment, all organic, inorganic waste or mixed waste are dumped in a landfill. And of course, there are some scavenger. They recycle some of the recyclable materials and they sell it from their own initiatives. But from the larger level, or from the government sector, there are some policies, but that is not strictly implemented at the field. And at this moment, inorganic part is not very much recycled. Just informal scavenger or informal sector are recycling the inorganic parts. And the recycle means there is no material recovery provision in Nepal. They simply recycle like paper, plastic, and they sell it, ultimately go to another country, and they recycle those materials. So is it clear, Javed?
Thank you very much, Sunil. So we have
You're
another
welcome.
question from you. You mentioned during your presentation about the comparison of composting versus the biogas. So do you think there is any technical difficulty on part of doing part of implementing a biogas digester instead of the composting, or is it rather easy to go for composting in comparison to biogas? What are the issues regarding selecting these two options?
Yes, that is very good question. Uh, of course, biogas production means you need some anaerobic digestion technology. That means you need biodigester, and there are certain factors we have to maintain there. So there is some technology in between. There is bio waste, and another side is biogas. In between, we have technology, reactor, digester. So that means certainly those technology are mature at the moment. There should not be any problem. Only the problem is perhaps upfront cost of acquiring those technology. And the second one is there is not much awareness or not much knowledge in the country as well. To operate the large biogas plant, to develop the large biogas plant, very few knowledge are available inside the country. But if we look at it as a global perspective, the technology is very mature. There shouldn't be any problem, and it's not that difficult technology as well. It's easy. Only we have to maintain certain condition. That means when you have feeding material, there should not be some toxic material. There should not be any innovators. That means heavy metals. All those things. And for it, like poultry droppings, cow dung, and organic fraction of waste are quite easy material for biogas conversion. And when we talk about composting, of course, composting is comparatively easy, and it is less cost incentive at the upfront. Upfront you don't need large or huge investment for composting, and that is why perhaps people are interested in composting technology as well. But in between, like if you recover energy from the organic waste, still you have fertilizer. That is the same amount of fertilizer you can produce uh, uh, after generating biogas as well. So this is one steps where we can recover energy from biomass. Otherwise, if you directly go to the composting, you are losing the amount of energy out of it, and that energy is of course clean energy, not bad energy or not dirty energy. And another is when you go directly to the composting, in terms of climate, the greenhouse gas emission is more in composting rather, when we compare to the biogas technology. Biogas technology, there is also a few amount of fugitive emissions are there, but in composting technology, we have large amount of greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. So that is what I think people are more interested because of money or investment and easy way to converting it into the fertilizer.
Thank you, sir, for your all the questions and answers, responding to our queries. Next, we'll move to Mr. Amir Bhatt with questions from the participants. Uh, Sir,
Yes, I'm here.
okay, sir. Uh, we have some questions from you, from our participants. So we'll be asking the question next.
Yes, please.
So Ahmed, thank you very much for your presentation. This is SN from SAARC Center. So we have a question from you. You work in a government department and you are primarily involved with these private sector companies responsible for these waste management experiences. So, how waste management companies working very closely So I'm talking from the government perspective. What has been your experience in working with the private sector companies regarding this whole waste management uh, technique or this organization?
Thank you very much, Hassan. Your voice is distracting, but whatever I have heard from your part, I mean, as I mentioned in my presentation, for any private sector investment, I mean, there is absolute necessity that you have a strong policy in place and incentives in place. As far as waste to energy is concerned, there are a lot of incentives as far as the renewable energy incentives in place in Pakistan. Obviously, there is a new policy to come that based primarily on the comparative bidding. But from the private sector point of view, the things important first is the supply chain mechanism. I mean the fuel availability. I mean the fuel availability. Obviously, the composition of the waste would definitely be a critical part, but the waste assurance supply for waste to energy is critical. And then obviously I mentioned in my presentation that the regulator, because this is the grid connected project sale to the electricity, the upfront tariff is available, although, I mean, and a very good one. I mean, the upfront paid-in tariff is important, second one for the private sector investor. And obviously the sovereign guarantee being offered by the government of Pakistan. So, I mean, these three, four are very key things for waste to energy in general. The other two for the other last one is for the any power project.
Thank you very much. Another question is that what is the total waste collected and disposed by the LWMC since its inception? And second part of the question is, could you please tell us about the awareness campaign, if any, has been done by LWMC for general public for segregating their waste into biodegradable, organic, and inorganic?
Thank you. Your first question was, sorry, regarding
Total waste
which
collected and up till now.
okay. As I mentioned in my presentation, the waste generation trends has been increasing since the population is being increased. So far, currently, I mean, there is estimated about 7,000 tons per day the waste generation at Lahore, and the collection efficiency is about 95%. I mean, they are claiming about 6,500 tons per day collection, and basically the resource infrastructure they have, the gadgets, equipments, the geofencing wall. I mean, they also have a strong control and operation mechanism as well. They can see the truck is going on from one part of the collection center to the transfer station, and it is properly being weighed at this point of time to the landfilling or the dumping site. So it's being properly monitored, and the institutional capacity has also been increased. The second part is regarding the awareness, what has been done. I think it's been done on a very little part, but if you see the Pakistan scenario, you already know that the biggest city is Karachi, and unfortunately, to say that the collection and the transportation is not as of highest quality if you compare with the Lahore. So in my opinion, I mean, there are few things which have been done by outsourcing, and now the things have been transformed in terms of sustainability, financial sustainability of the companies, and as well as their awareness campaigns.
Okay, Amir, thank you very much. So we have another question from you. What is the offered feed-in tariff by the government for these waste-to-energy power plants? And the second part is that the waste pickers or the scavengers, have they been formally engaged in the LWMC project?
Your first part of the question is the validity of the upfront tariff. Yes, the validity, the upfront tariff for waste to energy municipal solid waste power projects determined by NAPRA was for 1 year. I mean, as I mentioned in the presentation as well, there is also a quota ceiling fixing for each province. So the validity is available for other province other than Punjab. But for Punjab, we can invite, and we are in the process for inviting another private sector investment on comparative bidding. This upfront tariff will be used as a reference benchmark tariff, and this would go like this. And the second part of the question is regarding the scavenging. Yes, I mean, this is a difficult proposition. And third, in this part of the world, as you heard about from the other presenters from Nepal, from India, this I mean, you need to have a very strong enforcement. I mean, the regulations should be strictly followed, and obviously the implementers. But I've seen some of the representatives from the LWMC, they claiming that there are some positives and there are some negatives. I mean, by taking these scavengers into the regime of LWMC as a diffractional part would be important. So I mean, this could be done, this can't be done. I mean, I've studied some case studies in Germany. I mean, initially they dropped this case. I mean, initially they discarded the fact that the scavenging should not be done, but later part they promote, and they taken this scavengers part into their official regime. So this both can be done, but obviously the control on these scavengers is highly is not being done here in Pakistan or in most part of the Punjab. Hello.
Yes, thank you very much, Amir. So, Amir, we have another question which is rather on the same question which was asked before. This colleague, Mr. Bilal, has asked a question that has any waste to energy power plant started operation under NAPRA upfront tariff?
Yes, I already mentioned that the one company in Punjab in Pakistan, they already accepted that tariff. They actually we are facilitating this project in Punjab, and we are hopeful that after having a complete bankable feasibility study, including approval of the environment study, the grid study, the regulator announced the upfront tariff. The company has accepted that upfront tariff, and the regulator also issued the generation license. The next step would be under the tripartite letter of support regime, where the project execution agreements could be signed. That would be the power purchase agreement and the implementation agreement. So this is only the very first project who have been taken this upfront tariff. No other project in Pakistan has availed this upfront tariff announced by NAPRA so far.
Thank you, Amir. So, Amir, we have another question for you. The question is, how far should be the location of the waste to energy power plant from the landfill area? Is there any standard which needs to be followed?
Look, I explained in my presentation that how could the waste management should be applicable. I mean, we need to be very focused. We need to be enhance our skills at all levels to reduce the waste at source. I mean, if we can do that, the reduction of the waste and segregation, and accordingly the collection and till its treatment. I mean, either you use for the compost or anaerobic digestion, or any recycling or material recovery facility. So ideally, it should be before the landfill site. I mean, you can, because material recovery facility can also have the waste to energy power plant, and also obviously most of the countries also have on the landfill side, on the dumping side. Like in Turkey, I mean, they have a large landfill sites, and on that landfill site they are not recovering the methane gas after the leachate treatment, but they also have a new generated waste at their door of the dumping site, and they could have they obviously have the waste energy power plant. We are also planning, because a lot of waste is already being dumped, and we do not have any other option left other than the rehabilitation, but that is only the very minute part. So we need to have a waste to energy plant at the landfill site. But now we are planning in Punjab that before going dumping into the landfill, after having some proper segregation, sorting, and recycling, the RDF portion should be for available waste to energy for the material recovery facility, and that is near at Multan Road at Sundar.
Thank you very much, Bhatt, for your detailed answers, and thank you very much for joining us during this webinar. So we move on to our.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Asan. Thank you very much. Thank you all the team.
So we move on to Mr. Rahul for his question answers. Do we have him?
Yes, I'm here. This is Rahul.
Rahul, thank you very much. So my name is Asan, as already I have introduced myself. So we have 2-3 questions for you. The first question is that a bankable feasibility is normally required for a community or region in an urban city. So do you think it is very important before conceptualizing or initiating a project for a specific community, as far as how much content of that waste is available, how much energy could be generated out of it, or which technology should be used? Could you shed some light on this aspect?
Yeah, thank you, Hassan. I think this is a basic question. Yeah, I mean, in any part of the world, whether you're a developing country or a developed country, you first start on analyzing how much waste you produce and what is the organic fraction, what is the non-organic fraction, what is the calorific value of your waste. And you have to start from, I mean, from ground zero, from ground up. So this is a basic thing. First, you have to do a baseline analysis of what your waste is, quantity and quality. And then you have to take a look at what are the economic benefits you want to generate. So, I mean, I've heard presenters today say about, for example, Sunil talked about the benefits of AD, anaerobic digestion, compared to the benefits of composting. Dr. Rao spoke about, high rate AD, so you can enhance the rate of anaerobic digestion. The point required is when you do a baseline analysis, you have to also do an economic analysis of feasibility in terms of finding out what economic value and what ecological value you can derive from your waste. So your priorities are fixed according to your local circumstances. For example, Bhutan has a 100% renewable energy. They can use the biogas for cooking, and also maybe for household heating in some perspectives, but it's maybe not so efficient for household heating. So maybe they can use anaerobic digestion to produce biogas. But maybe the priority for a particular, maybe a small town, let's say in Bhutan, is not biogas. They want to perhaps retop the soil with organic compost. So it depends on the local priorities, and local priorities are based by doing a feasibility analysis, a baseline analysis. And of course, when you do the economic analysis, you have to find out what is the cost you're putting into your waste now. How much money do you put in to collect your waste, to transport it, to dump it? And then after you have dumped it, you also have to calculate how much you're losing. On average now, you lose about $40 per ton of waste that you've dumped. And I mean, not per ton, let's say per 2 tons. I'm talking from a purely carbon emission standpoint of view. If you assume that for every 2 tons you're losing 1 ton of carbon, you've already lost $40 right there by doing nothing. You've just lost the money by dumping it. So you have to take into account all of those economic variables of accounting. But I also say I sense in the question that there's also an implication of cost associated with technological applications. So, for example, if you assume that aerobic composting costs, let's say, $20,000 to set up a decentralized center in a city, that's a very high cost for a city. So, where will the money come from? I think that the question is, when you start to do the economic analysis of how much money you're already putting into wasteful practices of open dumping, collection, inefficient collection and dumping, first you find out how much money you're sinking. Automatically the equations start to improve. I'll give you a very quick example. The last two projects we implemented, the last two IRRCs we implemented before the project was closed down by the UN, were in Indonesia. It was a small city called Jambi, and Jambi has just finalized now their IRRC plant, and it is exclusively for anaerobic digestion. They divert 2 tons of organic waste per day, and they convert it completely into biogas. They're not so much interested in anything else. They make biogas. They use the biogas to generate electricity, and they're providing electricity free. So they're not getting any revenue from that electricity. But they calculated that just the cost of transporting 2 tons of waste every day, taking it 60 kilometers outside the city and dumping it, just that cost itself, and the cost of having a dump yard, that means the cost of land itself, they calculated that by that the 2-ton IRRC is saving them almost up to 60% of that total cost. So you're not getting any revenue out of it, but still you saved some money. You saved money from sinking. So economic analysis involves all variables. I mean, that's the long-winded answer to your question.
Thank you very much, Rahul. So, Rahul, another question. We have talked a lot about the organic and inorganic waste, and could you shed some light on is there any technique available, feasible technique for management and treatment of the electronic waste, which is a very significant portion of the waste?
Yeah, this is this is like the big elephant in the room that nobody knows what to do with. This is a big problem, and I'll tell you, this problem is now a problem everywhere. In Bhutan, just yesterday, I spoke to the mayor of Bhutan, of Thimphu city, and he's here today now in Seoul with us. He said that number of cell phones has increased 5 times in 5 years in Thimphu city alone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and now where do you, if your old phone has to be thrown, where do you throw it? You don't ship it back to China or to wherever it came from. You have to normally you throw it locally, or you ship it to a recycler in India. So this is a monumental problem. Unfortunately, in my limited experience of working in the waste sector for a decade, I have not seen any practical solution of recycling waste, e-waste, other than making sure that the producer is held responsible for buying it back from you. So this is a policy perspective now. In a small developing country, let's say like Bhutan, or a small city, let's say like maybe a secondary city in India, how does it deal with this e-waste? I think you have to force your companies that are selling it to have buyback schemes. So there has to be a very strong policy environment, a very strong regulatory support for that policy, for that specific policy, and compliance. I'll just go one step further, and you've talked about e-waste. An equally problematic, or maybe even more problematic issue is single-use plastics. Anywhere in the world you go now, just go to any dump yard. Just go to the dump yard outside your city, wherever you're sitting right now, and you see what's the maximum amount of waste inside of it, in that dump. It's single-use plastic. So what do you do with it? No country in the world, whether you talk about Sweden or Norway or Denmark, any country in the world has a solution, a practical solution for dealing with single-use plastics. So I think that you have to have a policy environment and a regulatory environment to back up that policy environment to prevent this inflow. You have to turn off the tap, prevent the inflow of let's say, plastics. And in the case of e-waste, where you cannot prevent the inflow, then you have to have some producer responsibility. In the long run, that's the solution. In the short term, I think it's important to promote recycling industries. In the short term, in the long term, they will not be effective because you're pumping in money. You're effectively subsidizing an industry that's allowing you to produce more e-waste. So again, that's the long-winded answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rahul, for a very detailed answer. Like you said, there's a sustainable solution right now for this e-waste, which is a big problem. So coming up to another thing, another participant has asked a question regarding this capex and opex cost of different technologies in your IRRC model.
Okay, you want me to turn on my screen, you mean?
Yes, yes. I wanted you because we had earlier asked you to
Just
finish
one
your item, so you could check on that.
I have to now look at it. I have so many web pages open. Okay, it's opening now. One second, I just converted into PDF to send to, oh, there we are. Okay, now it's opening up. Essentially, I mean, what is it? You can go ahead with the question. Aston, you can go ahead with the question. Can you hear me?
Okay. Rahul, the question was, since you had shared that slide earlier and you had mentioned which different...
I'm opening it now, but you can go ahead with the question. Here is the slide.
The question was basically that the participant was interested in knowing these comparison of different cost related to capital and operational cost of different technologies. Since you were not given enough time to explain this slide in detail,
okay.
so maybe we could take 2-3 minutes more to explain.
Now see, these costs are averaged out. I would say all of these costs have been averaged out in 6 different countries. So Pakistan, we have an IRRC in Islamabad, in the Jammu and Kashmir Housing Society. Then you have in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka we have 3, in Vietnam we have 2, Cambodia we have 1, and Indonesia we have 2. So in 6 countries, we, over 10 years, we averaged out the costs, and then we multiplied the costs by almost 1.3 times. So these are very high costs for what can actually be done. I'll quickly run you down to the costs. Now, these costs have been estimated from the perspective of the UN system. So the UN has a component of capacity building. The UN has a component of supporting the city to have awareness programs for 3R. And then there is a cost associated with permits and surveys, to do baseline surveys. Baseline survey has to be done very, very robustly, very accurately. It also should also involve economic analysis. So that's why the cost of a survey can be high. So these costs that you see on the screen, can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
you.
Okay. Yeah. So the cost of establishing the IRC is the highest cost, which is approximately, let's say, $20,000 per ton. This is a high-end estimate. It can be less than this. The plant, for example, in Jambi that we made for 2 tons cost us less than about $29,000. So that's less than $19,000 per ton. So it can be less than $20,000. Then the capex we have taken as an average of 10% of OPEX. That means whatever is your upfront capital cost, your OPEX cost, is 10% of your capex. That means your investment cost. Every year you're going to spend about 10% in operations of the plant. Now the cost of permits can be even 0. Because if the local government has to take permits for a plant that is in its own property, it's its own ownership, then they're going to get permits for free from their own government, right? They are the government issuing the permits essentially to themselves. So this permits cost can be less, but baseline survey costs, you have to involve consultants or a technical company or a university to do the baseline survey. So that has a cost. And then the other costs are basically training programs. You train officers. You train them on what an IRRC is, why it should segregate waste, why it should operate at a particular efficiency of, let's say, 85% to be economically feasible. So that's the total amount. Those are the total costs. If there's any specific question to any particular figure, I can tell you.
Thank you very much. No, absolutely. You have very rightly explained all these costs. And the participant, one of the participants asked to explain that slide in detail, which you have already done so. So maybe we can ask all our experts and you also to share our slides with us, and then we can share these presentations on our website later on. Thank you very much, Rahul. Over to Mr. Bhaskar.
Thank you very much, Asim.
Thank you so much, sir, for your for answering our queries, sir. So
yes,
So now we are coming to the end of the session, and to conclude, we have heard from the expert on waste to energy. It is such an informative session We have listened to Mr. Rahul Tipu Baswani, Mr. Amir Sajid Bhatt, Dr. Gangani Rao, and Mr. Sunil Prasad Lohani. Some of the recommendations that we came upon are: number one, segregation of municipal solid waste at source is the key to its sustainable solution. Awareness of user for waste segregation may be done through electronic, print, and social media. Third, evaluation of waste content and potential is very essential before realizing the project. And fourth, federal government, provisional, and local governments should collaborate academia and industries to advance achieving tangible results. With this, I would like to conclude our webinar. Thank you everyone for attending today's session of the webinar. We have listened to an excellent presentation delivered by the experts on waste to energy. The recording of this webinar will be available on SAARC Energy Center's YouTube channel shortly. We would love to hear from you for any suggestions and comments for further improvement, plus any suggested topic of your interest on which you want us to arrange future webinars. We would gladly do that. With me signing out, thank you once again joining us today and looking forward to see you in next webinar. Bye bye.